Hi everyone, I apologize about my voice. Believe it or not, I have laryngitis again. This is Jackie Schomburg-Abstract, and today I wanted to walk through one of my sketchbooks with you. I haven't done this before, at least not that I can remember. So this is my square sketchbook, and this is the one I keep my grid journals in and other things. And I finished this one and was just taking a look at it and thought I'd share that with you. So this was part of I was just messing around with Prussian blue. So this was just one of those. And this was a process art exercise I did with the same thing, Prussian blue with black and white. Another process art, this was not Prussian blue. And here's some collage and mixed media here. This one I like. This one, not that I didn't like the other two, but those were kind of dark and kind of stormy for my preferred color palette. So this is much more of a rainbow, which of course I love a good rainbow color design. And I like how these celadon dots turn into the black dots. That transition there. Lots of white space, which I'm realizing that I really enjoy having a lot of space. You wouldn't know it from the art I've been making lately, but when I look back at pieces like this, I'm like, it's so nice just to see some space here. It also brings more attention to the details that I do have. So, note to me for the future. Now I go every other page just so in case I make a masterpiece on here that I decide I want to take out and frame, I'm not losing something on the other side. This is one of my first, maybe my very first grid journal exercise. And this is the one I started with this acrylic ink squiggle, this red back here. It's interesting looking at this now because now it doesn't look very refined at all. And it doesn't have to be refined, but I like the colors. I like that it's very warm with some pops of green here and there. But it's interesting to me. I feel like there's a lot of kind of the same amount of red and orange and black and white in each one. I think that's what I'm reacting to. I wish that there was, one was mostly red with a little bit of the other colors and one was mostly white with the other colors a little bit. So, whatever, food for thought. This was just a color exercise. I think this was a Kelly Wynn exercise, just looking at different colors and the overlaps and how the colors went together. And this was also a Kelly Wynn exercise from her Abstract Landscapes course. So I like these. This is like a enlarged grid journal, just these 8. I like these 2, and maybe this one the best. The other ones I think need a little bit more something in them, maybe more contrast. There's not really a whole lot of black elsewhere. This was one, I made a video with this, and still this reminds me so much of the wood paneling I had in my room that I rented in college. So it feels very retro to me, because even at the time when I was in college, 20 years ago, it still felt retro then. So this is way retro. Now, another grid journal exercise, I really, really like this one. I love the colors together. I love that there's some scale differences. So these dots look giant right on this tiny 2x2 square. And there's some teeny tiny lines or some thicker light blue lines. And you can see like the color balance is much more interesting. Let me flip back to this. See how, do you understand what I mean? Where it's like equal parts pink and red and orange and black in each square. Whereas here, I feel like there's different amounts of each color. Right here, there's just a tiny bit of light blue and a little tiny bit of orange, and then more purple than orange and tiny and blue. Here's more dark blue. This one, there's a lot more purple. Here's a lot more purple. No purple here. Actually, there's a teeny tiny bit of purple. And just some of the marks are more varied. So the only blue that appears in this square are these 6 dots. And here it's just this little square that then got scratched into. So I was really happy with this. I think these colors are really cool too. Reminder to me to explore those a little bit further. Now this one I did, I believe this was when I got my Stabilo Woodies. Could be wrong, but I believe that's what this is. So this is just color, just experimenting with this color palette. Ultimately, I didn't do anything with this color palette, so I must not have loved it enough to continue, at least yet. And looking at it now, it feels like these are a lot of mid-tones. So if I made a black and white picture of this, I would bet that all of these colors look very similar in a shade of gray, right? The white would look white, but there's not a whole lot of contrast in here. There aren't any real pale colors. They're all kind of in that medium zone between white and black. Now this one I liked. Again, this reminds me of like Italy or someplace where there's a lot of good, great greens. Obviously Italy, the flag, right? But I do like some of the shapes coming through. I really love this. Seeing this now, I'm reminded of how much I liked making it, because it looks like, I don't know, like a little cocoon or something. And I liked how this was just the end of a striped paper that I had. I had cut off the other edge of it to use the stripes, and this was just the leftovers. But I love this combination. And I like the differences here. I like this thin black line. There's some something scratched into these other colors. It might be hard to see. This, I love this scratched into the white here. Could use another layer around those rainbow shapes just to make this a little bit more opaque. This one I love also. So lots of pink, lots of red, lots of Indigo Azul, quinacridone gold, and then the butterflies that I love, peppered in there, sprinkled in there. I like how I shaped some of these compositionally. So using the white to force this shape, but it doesn't feel very forced. This, I love just the giant scale of this. There's something about this that I like as well. Could use maybe like a little pop of blue in here. So all these pages serve as reminders to me about color combinations, compositions that I might take with me, or they might just be locked into my brain and they might come out in other ways. This was obviously a full-size piece that I worked on. Mixed media, big collage chunk here, some tissue paper collage. It's just fun. This is just working with colors that don't typically work with in these combinations. This one I really like. This is one of my Christmas ones. I like this. This is my handwriting, for those of you who don't know. So I love having that in there. I think that was from one of my morning pages that I just tore up. Or maybe even like a to-do list, because I see things crossed off. And then my Tazo tea bags sprinkled throughout with the green back here. I was very pleased that I did a red and green series without it looking too much like Christmas colors. This I like. This reminds me of like a seascape landscape, with this being some like reflections on the water. Like the oranges fading to yellows, fading to like a creamy peach. This was an experiment with some cool blues. Clearly it was not finished. So, you know, again, this is a sketchbook. This is not a finished piece of anything. This is just for me to experiment. I love the idea of having a start to finish sketchbook that is gorgeous and beautiful. But if you do that, don't let that take away from making sure you have time to play and room to experiment. And these last two pages, yeah, these are from when I did a video on using a jelly plate as a starting point for an abstract landscape. So I used my small 5x7 jelly plate and just stamped things on here. And then once I had a background that I guess I liked it at the time. I thought it would be helpful in this landscape, that I just painted and collaged directly onto it. So that's it. That's this whole this whole sketchbook. It gave me a lot of great ideas, and I mean, look at this first grid journal exercise compared with, right, this is the last one in here. I like that it's moving toward, the scale has really improved. Here there's lots of thick lines and thick pieces, and things are similar sized, more so than here. Here I have some really thick lines, some big chunks of color, and I also have some really skinny pen lines, tiny font, bigger font, giant typed font. So there's just more variety here, which I think is why it's much more satisfying for me to look at this. Whereas here, I still like all the variety, but it's also a lot of, it feels more messy and more chaotic because there aren't as many differences, or the differences aren't as profound. Profound makes it sound very lofty. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, right, there aren't any teeny tiny skinny lines. There are lines, and then some lines that are a little thicker, and some lines that are a little thicker. But nothing is like, these are huge lines with some, you know, moderately, this is the smallest line I have in this series against those thick lines. But here, right, I have big thick lines, the same thickness, and then have some teeny tiny lines. All right, well, that's it for today, guys.